opportunity despite 4 companies breaking out in the space because of how many organizations still need to go through the transformation into cloud-delivered communication services. And so I want to share with you as well the opportunity in terms of the addressable market that you can go after, and then reiterate some of the trends that you've heard this morning around things like CPaaS or an API-driven strategy, and how to capitalize on customer differentiation and customer experience so that you can walk away from here with a better perspective on how you differentiate your business against the other folks in the space and drive more share of wallet in the future from the customers that you're engaging with. But first, I have to spend a bit of time on who Ooma is. So do we have anybody that's an Ooma customer here, either home security or solution at your house? No, all right. By the way, if you need home security, we have a fantastic solution for that. So Ooma's been a long-standing company that's been based up in the San Francisco Bay Area in the Valley for a significant period of time. And we're most well known for the residential voice platform that we deliver, but the company's continued to diversify into a variety of other areas, and that includes home security as a platform. And if you think of extending the footprint we have in the house with a residential voice service, there's a great opportunity, because we have that physical footprint, to deliver solutions like sensors for motion or door or water sensors or smoke sensors. And all of this is built around a platform that allows us to weave together these different solutions so that it provides a very simple to use offering for residential customers and allows us to expand it. Part of the transformation for us is we saw the opportunity in the SOHO and SMB space around communications. So many of these customers are not sophisticated in their ability to articulate what they're looking for. Rather, they say, hey, I need my phone, AT&T or Comcast or one of the other cable providers. And so we seized on that opportunity in the market, and this is where our relationship with 2600Hz comes in, and built a platform called Ooma Office that provides a curated experience for that small business customer. So they're looking for something that's reliable, they're looking for something that's easy to use, and they're looking for at a reasonable price. They're a value-based consumer of these types of services. And we leveraged the KAZOO platform to build this offering for us, which is accelerated to the point where, as a company overall, between all platforms, we have about 2 million users running on Ooma's systems. And we customized the front end, or the end user portal and the management portal, to again provide a specific process that an unsophisticated customer can go through so they can set up their phone service in their small business environment. Beyond the SMB, we also saw that there's another opportunity to move upmarket. And despite the market having a lot of players in it, there's still a very, very real opportunity to deliver value for customers that's differentiated from the top 4 players in the UC as a service market now. And so for us, it led us to our acquisition of Voxter. And so that became our platform. And it's much more of a bespoke solution, again, built on KAZOO, but allows us to tailor our offerings for customers that are interested in integrating with key line business applications, taking a vertical approach, providing a more enhanced end-user experience. So desk phones are a wonderful example where we can actually map out and deploy our own user experience within that handset to simplify things like park, or if they have an ACD and they have agents that want supervisors that want to monitor calls. And we see this as a really large opportunity between the SMB up to the enterprise, and continuing to a different way than what Control, 8x8, Vonage, and Mitel are doing. So what about the market opportunity? Is this real for us? Do we still have an opportunity to generate meaningful revenue as business? And the answer is fundamentally yes. So we're just at the beginning of the opportunity in the market. If you look at the US alone, the number of addressable businesses that are here is massive. And you look at the transition from premises UC into UC as a service, and we've just scratched the surface on that opportunity. We're roughly, depending on the analyst you ask, 10 to 15% in the transition market from premises systems. What it means for us in the future is we can seize on this opportunity, and we can seize on the transitions that are going on in the space. So if you look at some of the data around the forecasted opportunity from Synergy over the next couple of years, we see a very real trend that is happening. We see a decline in what was typically commodity voice or hosted PBX and premises UC over the next couple of years, and a very quick rise of UC as a service. As more and more customers become educated on how communications and collaboration can change the way their employees work, the way they engage with their customers, they realize, I see a place for this in my business, and I want to try to drive as much value as possible. And because we're so early in this opportunity, it presents a good chance for us to take an API first or a CPaaS first approach to how we have conversations with customers and how we're trying to solve fundamental business needs that aren't just dial tone related. So if you think about the evolution that industries go through, there's a concept called the S-curve. So I ran strategic planning and overall strategy at ShoreTel, and this is something that we would leverage as an executive team to look at the opportunities that would exist, and this applies to a wide variety of businesses. And the intent here is every industry in its current state goes through a disruption over time. So you start to see the emergence of a new industry, it begins to peak, and then there's a decline as something else comes in to disrupt the way that that industry is functioning. So if you look back historically at this within the space, great example of this disruption is the transition from TDM into VoIP, and we saw this happen over a long period of time, and Cisco really did this. Disruption of VoIP by UCaaS, where there's a lot more inherent value in the solution that customers are consuming, and it makes it harder and harder to justify the existing price point, and you start to see commoditization in that market. So if you think about our space now and what that looks like over time, you've heard a little bit of this morning already. So we're making the shift from voice is a commodity service that has a lower price point, which is a natural evolution of an industry, into seeking more value from the service I'm consuming, which is UCaaS, to the disruption of the communications platform as a service industry into UCaaS. And this is a fundamentally different way to think about the market. So you heard about CPaaS earlier this morning, and I want to reiterate why this approach is different and how it disintermediates the existing value chain in an industry. Historically, when I was buying a communications package, I had to buy the whole thing. So let's say I had a call center and I wanted to do integration into Zendesk or Salesforce.com. I had to go to a traditional vendor and buy everything for all of my users. With the emergence of Twilio and their leadership in the market and then the following of other CPaaS companies, it changed the nature of that conversation, where it wasn't, I have to buy a whole UC system from them. Rather, it was a discussion around business process, and suddenly there was a platform that allowed rapid development of functionality specific to their business need as a point solution. And this is significant in our industry because it allows you to consume a communications-related service, whether that's voice, video, SMS, MMS related, and weave that into a specific business process that I have in my organization without having to buy in the way that I traditionally did. And it turned the industry upside down on its head, and it's why you've seen the reaction from the vendors that were shown actually earlier around acquiring CPaaS companies. And I did the same thing at ShoreTel, acquired a CPaaS company, because it allows us to protect the price point at a minimum and engage in new revenue opportunities where customers are much more willing to open their wallet and pay you for solving a significant pain point or process error within their organization. So if you look at the market now and the state of where we are, there's a variety of things that are happening overall from a cloud perspective. First and foremost, and critical, is the overall cloud wars, as I like to call them. So there's an ensuing battle between Microsoft, Google, and Amazon for cloud dominance in general. And it's caused a reaction from Google in particular, and then Microsoft, because of the steps that Amazon has taken and how much of the overall public cloud market they own, and then the introduction of microservices and other solutions that allow me to develop very rapidly. And as a result, you've seen people hunker down and start to broaden their platforms, interestingly enough, and you begin to see diversification into other adjacent areas to capture more of that share of wallet from the customer overall. So case in point, Amazon entered into contact center with the Connect solution. Amazon entered into collaboration with their Chime solution. And this is causing triggering reactions from how Microsoft and Google view their role in the market. And it's interesting to keep an eye on this over time, because if you're not selling on a strong value proposition and delivering unique value to your customer, it becomes very easy for the customer to think, why don't I just consume this service from Microsoft? I'll take Teams and that'll be sufficient for me in my environment. Or I go to Slack, for instance, and that's more than adequate for the solution I need around communications. You have to make sure that you keep your pulse on that customer and where their true pain points are to protect your role in the market. The ability to create solutions in a vastly quicker pace is crucial going forward. What this means is it's a double-edged sword, essentially. There's risk to being disrupted by this. It lowers the barrier of entry for somebody else to come into a market because they can do it so quickly and so inexpensively compared to before. But it also means there's a lot of latitude in how you can choose to capitalize on these tools to differentiate your own offering into the target segments that you're pursuing. And you can tap into the massive R&D that's available from these organizations. So if I look at things like machine learning and artificial intelligence, what would not have been feasible before is very, very practical now. And all of the money that Google, Microsoft, and Amazon are investing into this allows us to approach our customers in a way that is unique and delivers, again, value that they're seeking in the market. The platform ecosystem has emerged as a key disruptor in a lot of different markets. So platform as a service lowers, again, the barrier of entry to move into a new space. So CPaaS is an example within our market. But it's forced companies to reimagine how they approach their own customer base and their own go-to-market routes, where they've started to capitalize on, let's make our offering a platform so that I can allow the folks that participate in my ecosystem to innovate on their own, independent of the core offering that I may serve. And the final area of note is Internet of Things. So we all have almost undoubtedly seen this within our own homes. IoT is a pervasive term that's thrown around, but we're starting to realize how this can impact us both as consumers of these solutions and the entry of IoT-based solutions into the business market. And folks aren't typically saying, I want an IoT solution in a business organization. Rather, it's solving for a specific pain point and falls under the umbrella of IoT. And I'll share with you some examples later around how you can differentiate in IoT, for example, in this space. So you look at the market overall for unified communications as a service, and there's been 4 clear leaders that have emerged in the space by revenue. So RingCentral, obviously number 1. 8x8 and Vonage are kind of neck and neck for number 2, and then Mitel with the ShoreTel acquisition moved into the 4th spot. The issue for these folks is widespread and systemic in trying to pivot their business to a different model and look at how they're not disrupted in the market. So all of them have taken an approach where they've embraced an indirect go-to-market route, so they're selling through channel partners, and they're moving up market. So they've abandoned the SMB space, which is where Ring and 8 in particular were historically very strong. Because they're chasing the bookings numbers or the revenue that they need over time, they have to target the larger and larger enterprises. However, it's created a void in the SMB space, which by organization size, by employee count, is the largest addressable market here in the US, and that parallels in many countries in Western Europe and in Asia Pacific as well, which means there's an opportunity. As they take their eye off the ball, looking at the SMB space, it means that we can come in and deliver a unique value to that customer set in a very different way than what the large leaders in the space will do. If you look at the product strategy that all 4 of these players have taken, they've focused really hard on pushing a lot of value down deep into the basic profile. So where it was traditional kind of telephony-oriented functionality before, now I have full, rich, unified communications capabilities built into the baseline profile for my offering. And then they all take a slightly different tack to how they do value-add functionality, like CRM integrations into Salesforce.com, for example, or Sugar CRM, or you look at the support side. If if I'm integrating with Zendesk, it's kind of a mix of how they tackle that and how simple they make that for their users. And then the other interesting thing is the whole CPaaS disruptor in the space. So what you've seen emerge is a difference between an API-first approach and a CPaaS approach. So if you look at an API-first approach, this has been Ring's niche in the market. And what it means is I'm opening up my platform with APIs, but fundamentally you still have to buy the phone system from me. I can't have a solution without the phone system. On the opposite side of that is what Vonage has done with Nexmo. I can create solutions completely independent of the fact that I'm buying a unified communications as a service platform. So I may be trying to solve for customer engagement models, and I want to leverage Nexmo's solution to have SMS engagement, or I want to have voice engagement, leverage IVRs, build AI bots around it. And so there's a lot of opportunity in this confusion in the space. And it's worth mentioning that customers don't go out and say, I want a CPaaS solution. Customers have no idea what a CPaaS solution is. Rather, customers say, I have a business problem that needs to be solved, and CPaaS is the answer to it. And that's important to remember when you engage with your customers, because if you go ask them, do you want something CPaaS? They're probably going to look at you cross-eyed and not really understand what you mean. And the final point is, around the leaders in the space, because of the maturity cycle that we're hitting now, there's price commoditization on core telephony and a circling around a lower price point. So what you see between the top four in the space now is price banding roughly in that $25 to $35 a month space. And again, this is even more reason to look at how you create a different experience for your customers, how you're solving problems in a different manner for the target market that you're going after that allows you to either protect a price point that you already have or charge a premium for that solution. And this is critical in the management of churn as well. The more ways you can weave your tentacles into a customer's environment and solve for those problems, the much more difficult it is for them to churn out because of the pain of switching those systems. So if we look at the UC space in particular and some of the key trends, what we've seen is an emergence of brand new players relative to the old titans in the space. So the legacy premises UC folks have really struggled to make headroads in the UC as a service space. In fact, some have chosen to get out. So if you look at the case of Toshiba exited the business, NEC is nascent to non-existent in the cloud UC space, and Panasonic is rumored to get out of the space. Cisco doesn't really have a true cloud solution, which was part of the BroadSoft acquisition for them. Avaya went through Chapter 11 and had to reemerge. It's really difficult to change a business that has all of that history and heritage around a premises-oriented offering, which creates a big opportunity for other folks. And the basic telephony functionality, again, has been commoditized over time as companies look to add more and more value behind the integrations that they're delivering to make their solution different. And if you look beyond just the general sector and look at market dynamics overall, there is an emergence of outside players that are not historically in the UC space, that are looking at capturing market share and share of wallet within the space. And I'll walk you through a few examples of that on my next slide. But it's important to keep an eye on who may choose to enter into the space and what that means for how you position your offering to your customer set. Market consolidation is obviously rampant in the space. So we saw this, Mitel obviously acquired ShoreTel, Mitel just sold to private equity. We saw LogMeIn acquire Jive Communications. We'll see more and more of this over time as the space kind of coalesces around the core folks that are going to offer a solution that's horizontal in nature. But it's not something to panic about. There's still tons of opportunity to have a solution that's tailored to the market segment that you want to go after, whether that's vertical oriented, whether that's size oriented, whether it's location oriented. But always keep an eye on who's coming in and how they're positioning the value of their platform into the customers that you're selling to. And so if we look at general UCaaS trends in the space, there's a big focus on expanding the scope of the solution set that's offered. So a wonderful example of this is asynchronous communications or work stream communications. We call this a lot of different things, but the ability to capture that end user's desire for how they want to communicate in a non-traditional voice way. So Slack does a wonderful job of this and is a leader. And so there's a lot of collapsing of how that fits into a UCaaS portfolio and how you can be successful in capturing the next generation of workers that are taking over the workforce. And it's the millennials that are predominantly driving this, where they're not picking up the phone anymore. Rather, they're just slacking back and forth for all of the communications, and they may hop on a video session if they want to speak with others. And that's a fundamentally different approach than what the space has been used to, being voice-centric. And connectivity still remains a problem in the space. So folks are trying to solve for this in a variety of different ways. So MPLS, point-to-point T1s are still really expensive. They don't have a role in smaller organizations. The quality of connectivity in terms of loss, latency, and jitter of the internet has improved, but it's not fully there yet. So we've seen a lot of folks steer into SD-WAN solutions. There are companies out there that are solving for the middle mile, I like to call it, where they have sensors deployed across the internet and can determine what's happening in real time and make routing decisions accordingly. But this is still a big area of differentiation. And one of the biggest complaints that I hear from customers that are switching away from RingCentral, 8x8, and Vonage is call quality. And if voice is important to your business, that's a showstopper. And they'll move away instantly to get into a solution that provides consistent voice quality for that business. And it's crucial to remember that we can play that angle with folks, and there are a lot of good ways to solve it and make it simple for the customer to understand. Deliver SLAs that give them a sense of guarantee or comfort around the quality of the voice connection that they're leveraging. And then there's emerging technologies in the space that will be interesting for us as well. So artificial intelligence, and if you think of the contact center environment, there's a big opportunity here. So leveraging AI bots to interact with that customer that's reaching out either via SMS or it's a live chat to try to solve for as many things as I can before it hits a real person. And that's about reducing the cost of the call center environment or contact center environment for customers, but also streamlining the engagement in the way that folks want to communicate. And if you can provide a meaningful AI solution that will deliver the answers that they're seeking, that works out well for customer experience. Machine learning capabilities, so if you think of, again, contact center sentiment analysis. So I have real-time data coming in on how I'm engaging with customers in a call center, and this can even be a meeting too. And I can tell by tone of voice, or if I have a video stream, facial expressions, where I can provide a sentiment rating on the other folks that are part of either that engagement with the call center agent or within the meeting. There's a lot of power that's being unlocked by the key cloud platforms that give us new capabilities that make it easier for the end user. And that's kind of the key here. If you think about IoT and our world and where you can capitalize on a different experience, think about the meeting room. How many times do you go into a meeting room, you have to try to hop on a bridge, you want to set the projector up and get the screen sharing, and you wind up spending 15 minutes of your meeting trying to get everybody on the call, trying to get everything all shared. That's a terrible, terrible user experience. And folks that can solve for that fundamentally change the way communication exists within the work environment and how you make it simple for the end users in that environment. And that's where looking at leveraging CPaaS solutions to craft that sort of experience stands out against everybody else in the market. So disruptors. These are the folks that are coming at this from an entirely different angle in the market. So Amazon is obviously an easy one to think of. They were the platform for everyone. Let me host everything on my public cloud. Let me simplify development. But then they started to steer into going after enterprises directly. And they dipped their toe in the water with email first. They had a file sharing solution. And then we saw the emergence of Amazon within our space. So first they announced Chime, which is a collaboration platform, and then they built their own contact center solution. And it was leveraged off of the same technology that Amazon was using internally. They commercialized this for other folks, and they came out with a disruptive pricing model. So no longer is it seat-based pricing, it's usage-based pricing, which was interesting because we've been seat-based pricing either on the cloud side or on premises for contact center for a long time. And this made it suddenly more affordable for a small environment to dip their toe in the water with contact center. And Amazon can do this because of their scale. So they have the ability to drive costs down substantially, and they maintain a margin structure that supports that others really can't. And the key for Amazon to watch out for is don't be price disrupted by them. You've got to have something that's compelling enough to the customer where they don't say, this is good enough. It's quite a bit cheaper, this is good enough. It'll do for me. And that's the fear and the risk around Amazon. And so Google's another example of this. Long been rumored to enter the space. They've kind of skirted around with it for years. They obviously had Google Voice from the Grand Central days, but Amazon's reactions and their movements in the space have triggered Google to pause and rethink about this. They've gotten much more serious about enterprise, with Diane Green running the Google Cloud ecosystem and business for them, and they are going to be entering into the UCaaS space. So news article broke about 4 months ago on this project. So within the next 12 to 18 months, Google will be a player in the space. Now their approach is different than the others. Google doesn't desire to be the end-all be-all solution. They desire to have something that's low enough and adequate enough in price point and functionality to compete against Microsoft. That's who they're targeting with this, and to hedge against Amazon if they choose to move directly into the space. But again, if you look at the low end of the market from a price point perspective, if Google is offering a solution at $10 a user a month, is that good enough for the customer? And how do you have something that's compelling enough to warrant a higher average selling price and deliver more value into that customer environment? You look at LogMeIn, who merged with GoToMeeting, long-term collaboration vendor. They too realized we're on the fringes of the UC space more broadly. There's a big opportunity here around UCaaS as a holistic solution in the market, and they acquired Jive Communications to fill in that void. And it's a significant player. So they have a direct sales force in the US of 400 people. And you look at what that does to our market, again, you've got to have something that's compelling and differentiated and approaching it from a different angle with your customers than just pure UCaaS that everybody else is doing. Microsoft, obviously, with Skype for Business, which is merging into Teams, very similar to Slack. The two of them are going at it, obviously. And that's how the millennials are communicating, their primary choice of communication style. Does that disrupt the need for traditional desk phones and voice licenses that we would sell in a cloud world because they're chatting? And on occasion, they may want to escalate into a voice or video call. So really think about how others are trying to disrupt in a non-traditional way in the market, and keep a pulse on what that means for your business, what that means for your customers, and how you protect them over time where they see a significant amount of value. You make them very sticky. So what does this mean going forward for us? I see a lot of opportunity in the space with the established players that have been around for a long time. So if I think about the RingCentral, the 8x8, the Vonage, and the Mitel, they all share a big common problem, and that's their platforms. Their platforms are ancient. 8's been the most progressive around this, but by and large, their platforms look like legacy technology, cobbled together, not API-driven, not high availability in an active-active model, and not globally distributed. They're standalone, essentially autonomous systems deployed around the world, and they struggle with the stability of those platforms because of how they've cobbled them together over the years, which is why you see outage after outage after outage. And there's a great article in No Jitter, if you haven't been to the website, that details some of the outages that the key players have experienced over the past 6 to 7 months, and it's substantial. And customers have little patience for a solution not being available, especially something like voice, if their business is dependent on voice communications with their own client base. So you look at how they try to expand this model out globally, and it's really challenging. So Vonage hasn't done it outside of Nexmo, which was largely a Western European country. They're US-centric because it's really challenging. 8 has been more progressive in standing up data centers and POPs. Ring has really struggled here. In fact, to the degree, while they have stated POPs in other countries, they're essentially just that. They're backhaul points to go into Northern Virginia, where their primary data center is. And again, as an end user customer, if I'm looking at experience of the solution, quality of that solution, I'm globally distributed with employees in different countries, that becomes a poor experience for them. And it's why they experience churn as a result, because their customers aren't happy with it. And then finally, the approach around API first. This is really, really difficult to do for the legacy companies. Ring's been most progressive about it in the industry. 8 doesn't really do it. They build all of their own integrations. Vonage will steer you off to Nexmo, which is completely unrelated to Vonage Business Cloud or their enterprise solution. And Mitel doesn't have a strong solution here either, including with the ShoreTel platform that they acquired. So that means there's a lot of opportunity for velocity of development with a solution that's architected appropriately and is API first, so you can cost effectively deliver customization for your customers that none of the top players can do in a manner that makes sense for their business. So if you think about communications and business overall and how it's evolved in time, what you've seen is a clear trend around how companies are focused on spending their dollars to improve the experience with their own client base. And it's all about customer experience. Customer success is another phrase you'll hear tossed around a lot. And so Gartner had some really interesting statistics on where the spend from IT and line of business leaders is going in the market. And if you find a way that allows them to engage with their customers more effectively, deliver a high net promoter score so the customers are happy, that's where you're going to find their willingness to spend dollars. That's where you create differentiation against everyone else just providing horizontal solutions that don't really solve for the nuances of every organization's requirements around engagement with their customers and providing a positive experience. So if we think about the core areas of success for a business, first and foremost, encourage you to definitely look at demand generation. So you've got to fill the top of that pipeline with meaningful leads, whether you're doing it direct, whether you're doing it indirect, but you have to have a strong strategy for getting your messaging out there, your branding out there, and driving awareness and inbound lead generation to your own organization. Be clear on your go-to-market model and how you're going to engage with those customers, how you're going to deliver differentiation. You can go at it direct depending on the segment that you like. You may find that I need independent software vendors, so software development shops to help customize solutions for your customers. But find the right model that allows you to really create a compelling experience for your customer, whether you do it on your own or whether you do it with a series of channel partners. And have a fanatic focus on customer success. Churn is the killer of the MRR model. Too many companies don't focus on managing the success of their customers after they secure them, and the cost to acquire a net new customer is exponentially higher than the cost of maintaining an existing dollar of MRR revenue that you have. So structure your organization where you're paying attention to how that customer is engaging with support. You have account managers to make sure the customer relationship is happy, and you can really focus on driving expansion of that share of wallet with a customer, so cross-sells or upsells into other solutions. And you'll have a really good read on if a customer is unhappy and if they're at a risk of churn if you engage in this model. And you can get ahead of it before it's too late. And the final area is obviously have unique product drivers, unique product value around your solution in the market relative to what everybody else is doing. So if you think about that, how do I create that differentiation in my model for my own product strategy? And I look at it through 4 different lenses. If I focus on the end user first, how do you enhance their engagement and their value with your service? How do I create a compelling experience where it's absolutely fundamental that they need me to work as an end user in the environment? Look at the power users or specific task type workers. So if you think of most organizations, they will have a sales team. How can I make that person's job easier? I can integrate it in with Salesforce.com, do contact record popping. Maybe I'm doing real-time voice transcription, leveraging an Amazon or a Google service and filling that into notes within Salesforce. There's a lot of opportunity to simplify the way that these folks work that's kind of communications adjacent, but that nobody's doing a great job of solving for. And if you're not going after contact centers in your customer base, you absolutely should. The call center, and I think it's important to have a distinction here. The call center within a company is very different than targeting call centers as a business. You leave that to the likes of Five9 and InContact, NICE, and the others. But there are so many companies that have small call centers within their organization, whether it's a help desk, for example, small customer service line. And solving for that with an experience that's tailored to what they want out of engaging with their customers will lead you to substantially higher ARPU. And we've seen this time and time again in the industry. I saw this at ShoreTel. Our average value of a customer, if there was a call center and there was 3 times a non-call center environment. And nobody's solving for this outside of 8 very well, because they've cobbled together third-party solutions for contact center that doesn't scale down into these small environments. They can't have 5,000 features with a significant investment in structuring the solution. They just want something that works for their business and will help them handle inbound, outbound calls, and maybe some other channels as well, like chat. And if you can go to them with a crisp message of, here's an integrated platform, an integrated solution for everyone in your business, they're going to take the path of least resistance and stick with you. And again, that helps mitigate churn, because now if I have to switch out my call center, that's painful for my business. And then finally, custom solutions. We heard about the CPaaS opportunity, which is a very, very real opportunity in the market. And customers know that they have a problem within their organization, and they're looking for someone to articulate that for. If you can tickle it out of them and understand it a bit more within the realm of how folks communicate, that makes you incredibly sticky with that organization. So if we think about where we went today, we reviewed the market opportunity. Remember, there's still a very sizable market opportunity here. There's a lot of share that's available for seizing, and there's plenty of room in this market for lots of competitors. Even if the guys at the top are going to continue to escalate their growth, they can't be everything to everyone, and they're very much kind of a cookie-cutter, horizontally oriented solution, which means if you're going to differentiate and take a vertical approach or custom approach, there's a really good opportunity to earn fantastic money in this space. We'll continue to see the acceleration of UC as a service versus traditional telephony-only oriented profiles, and remember to watch the S-curves. Capitalize on that next transition that's happening, like CPaaS, and have those conversations with your customers around how you can really solve their problems in a very different manner than anyone else in the market. We talked about the state of the industry. It's still early on, still early days. There's going to continue to be consolidation in the market, but don't let that frighten you. And make sure you keep an eye on the broader cloud trends and how you capitalize on solutions that aren't necessarily UC related the way we view it today, but present an opportunity for you to make it unified communications or communications related as a solution. And always keep an eye on the disruptors, because they may enter into your account in a very different way, with a very different message, and suddenly it becomes good enough where you're no longer needed. In terms of the value and differentiation, make sure that you have the capabilities that matter in your environment. Make sure that you capitalize on the contact center opportunity, and I can't stress this enough. It's a big void in the market. There's lots of small contact centers out there, and you can really increase your ARPU within your business by focusing on this. And have unique value drivers for your brand. Don't make it an easy substitute for some other solution. Make it unique to you, and make your customers passionate about what you deliver for them. And then the last thing is we talked about structuring for success. Make sure you set your organization up so you can drive the right type of demand generation with a marketing strategy. You have the appropriate go-to-market model for the target segments that you're going after, that you're engaging with your customers to manage those relationships effectively and efficiently, and track the metrics in your business to know the overall health and the opportunities that present themselves for where you can spend additional dollars to extract even more value out of the business that you're running today. Thank you, everybody.